Welcome, everyone, to season 4 of the Follow D Money podcast. The first episode of my 4th season. I felt it was necessary to address some things that happened, and I feel like my guest this week helped me get through some things that I was going through, that I went through, and he didn't even try to help me get through it, but he did. And first, before I even introduce him, I'm gonna talk about some things that happened and how I dealt with it, how I met this gentleman. And my guest this week is Brian Wolff. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It's an honor to have you on.
I hope you say that at the end.
I will.
Okay. All right.
I do want to let everyone know how we met.
Yeah.
And I have to start with our mutual friend, Cornelius George.
Yeah.
Told me that there was a man that he was befriending and became friends with that he thought you and I would really get along well.
Yeah.
And that was really all he said.
Okay.
I really think that you and Brian would get along. He showed me your LinkedIn, and we set up a date to meet. Maybe it was probably a month out, maybe.
Yep.
About a month.
Yeah.
We said we're gonna have breakfast on this day.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I was recording my podcast. I had a live event, and the night of my live event, my cousin and I were out downtown Indianapolis, and we were robbed at gunpoint. Someone stole my car. And that night was, it's hard to describe the emotions, the adrenaline. It's hard to express the fear, the anger, all the things that go on in that time frame. And that was like 2 a.m. And it was the day before I'm supposed to meet you.
Yeah.
And I get a call or a text from Cornelius at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And I'm still literally, I probably didn't go to sleep until 7. I don't know if I went to sleep, but he asked me if I was still coming to breakfast. And I said, I looked at my phone. I didn't have a car. And I was like, the immediate answer is I can't go.
Yeah.
I can't make it. And I didn't want it to be, I'm not making it, because it was just like, I was not in a mood to deal with anything.
Sure.
Yep.
Yep.
But something in me said that I needed to go and have this breakfast meeting, this introduction with you. And I got into my daughter's car and I made the trek to Broad Ripple. And I think on the way, did I text you guys on the way what happened? Or maybe you didn't even know until I walked in.
I might not have known until you walked in.
Yeah, I don't think
maybe Corn gave me a heads up before you got there.
Yeah, because Corn didn't know. I told him as I was driving, and I was having second thoughts still.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I didn't want you to meet me in this state. Because it wasn't the genuine me I would think.
Yeah.
But I told Corn, and I just said, I'll be there. I'm going to be a little tad bit late, but I was there. And when I first walked into the restaurant, it just felt like I was meeting two friends, because you were very welcoming, big old smile on your face, shook hands, introduced ourselves, and then Corn had to disappear.
He's like, I got to go.
Yeah, he had to go right away. So he left us. He just wanted to be there when we were initially introduced to each other. And we introduced ourselves as we waited for a table, and then we had an amazing conversation. And not only do I want people to know you and know about you and know your story, but I would like for them to know a little bit about our conversation, because it's important to me that people know what we talked about, because it helped me get over a very traumatic situation. So
that's great.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to say what your perspective of that day at all.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing that's most important is whenever you have, and you're right, we set these things up, like we set the meeting up a long time in advance.
Yep.
But whenever you get closer and you get locked in, what I will say to you is one of the reasons we were fast friends is because you kept that commitment. Because I was the same thing. I'm like, no, I can't. I've already committed.
Yeah.
I'm going to show up.
Right.
No matter what.
Yep.
Okay, because I committed.
Yep.
And you could have had a hangnail and said you didn't want to show up.
Yeah.
I could have made up a million excuses.
Yeah.
Okay, but I made a commitment, and I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do.
Right.
And so that's what led us together.
Yep.
And so I hope we get into how I got to you, sort of the third order of magnitude with with Cornelius, because I think that's a big part.
That's very important.
Yeah,
that's important because of the conversation that we had, and you told me how you got connected with him, and why it was important that you even had the conversation with myself.
Yeah.
So tell me your perspective of when we first met.
So first, Corn said to me, he's like, "You're going to get along with this guy great." Okay. And as big as my smile was, your smile must have been just as big. Okay. And then to hear your story, like firsthand, it was jarring.
Yeah.
And then in that moment, I don't really know what to say.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I can do is I can just listen.
Yep.
And then I can just be my genuine self and try and like I don't know. It's like help you. Like I'm grabbing a thread to help you sort of what feels right to you, the direction you need to go. I'm either guiding you that way, or I'm gonna. It's like, well, maybe you look at it a different way. Yeah. Maybe I can give you a different perspective. Right. But I can't relate. Right. So I've never been robbed at gunpoint for sure.
Yeah.
I've never had my car stolen. Now I have had my car broken into, and I can tell you how violating that feels. So
that also feels violating.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so then to take that to the next level, to actually have that happen in real time is so the best I can do is try and put myself in those shoes, and then be as authentically horrified as I can be, not having lived through it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. Well, let's get into your story.
Okay.
Where you come from, how you get to where you are. And I ask certain people to be on my show. And not only did you fit the criteria for having a great first meeting, but you fit the criteria of a successful person who has a very good story.
Yeah.
So I would like to share that with everyone.
Okay. Wow. So how far back should I go? I grew up in Michigan, so I'm a Midwest guy. You're an LA guy, right? So you shared that right away, which again is always fascinating to me because I want to get to know people who live in different places.
Right.
I grew up in the Midwest. I went to school. I got a banking job back. I'm old, so I got a banking job 30 years ago. And then I wanted to get into sales. Yep. And so I got into sales. I worked for a big pharmaceutical company, Johnson & Johnson. Then I went to work for a small company in Iowa.
Yep.
And that was software and technology. So it's sort of, I got pharma, I got technology. And then I moved to Indianapolis the first time in 99. Jill and I, it didn't matter where we lived. We could live in anywhere because the software company, we covered the entire United States.
Yep.
But then I went to work for a company called IMS Health, which took care of Lilly. So I took care of Lilly for 4.5 years as an account director.
Yep.
And at Lilly, I learned that people just want to know that you care about them. Okay, because Lilly was very upset with the company that I went to work for.
Okay. Because
they were sort of flying people in. They didn't really clearly IMS was sort of treating them as a sort of a second-class citizen. They didn't have dedicated people that worked for them. And so I showed up every day at Lilly and began to build relationships with people inside the company that mattered.
Yep.
And they responded phenomenally. I mean, Lilly's a great company, and they just want you to know that they just want you to, they want to know that you care about them.
Yep.
So I did that for 4.5 years. I moved east. I got a promotion, did that for a couple of years, but then I came back to Indianapolis, started a technology company. So I like to tell people we invented the cloud. And everybody says, well, you're Al Gore. And I'm like, no, Al Gore invented the internet.
Yeah.
Blue Lock invented the cloud.
There you go.
And the reason I can say that is because Pat O'Day, our chief technology officer, wrote the first Wikipedia entry for infrastructure as a service.
Yep.
And infrastructure as a service is one of the three layers of cloud. So you've got software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And so we invented that. He wrote the first Wikipedia entry.
There you go.
A year after we started. I did that for 8.5 years. You know, one of the most humbling things about that is I co-founded the company and then I got fired in 2014. I don't know. Did I tell you that part of the story?
That,
yeah. Okay. So for me, that's one of the ways I can keep it real because success is relative. And
you got fired from your own company.
I got fired from a company I co-founded.
That you co-founded.
Yeah, and it was that was very humbling. It was probably the best thing that happened to me. So, you know, I have a soft heart. So we're going to talk about my soft heart in a little while, I'm sure.
Okay.
Right. As we get through corn and you.
Yep.
But I have a soft heart too for anybody that's been in that position because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So generally the leaders dictate who's in their company. And, you know, sometimes there's just not a good fit.
Yep.
And you get ejected even though you can be a rock star and you can get ejected because styles don't fit or what have you. And so I tend to try and reach out to those folks because I'd like to help them brainstorm. I went through, it was the best time of my life and it was the worst because everybody will tell you, well, it's blue sky, right? You can do whatever you want. Right. And you're like, yeah, but what the hell am I going to do?
Right,
okay.
Right.
And I've got 2 kids and a wife and bills and all of that. I had to pay my mortgage and all that stuff. And
so were you bitter at any point? Like, were you upset? Like, what were the emotions going through that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I was. Nobody ever wants to be rejected.
Yeah,
and you know, honestly, to this day, I still have good friends that I talk to that still can hear the edge, and they're like, "Dude, you got to let that go. You know, you got to let that go." And by and large, I have. I think.
Okay.
But it's hard to be rejected like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be, you know, essentially thrown out.
Yep.
And so, you know, so I tend to like to brainstorm with people. I tend to try and pull threads. I like to fancy myself as a connector. And so I like to connect people.
Yep.
And so I had an opportunity. I ironically, after I left Blue Lock, then I went to, I did some consulting for the Purdue Foundry.
Yep.
And so for those of you that don't know the Purdue Foundry, so it's a bit of an incubator up at Purdue that helps the technology meet business people. Okay. So we try and get the technology off the shelf and get it into commercialization. And so that was one of the most transformative experiences of my life.
Wow.
Those guys were they were really good. Greg Deason and his group up there at the time. So Greg has moved on, but the Purdue Foundry is alive and well. Mitch Daniels sort of sent it on a path to big success.
Yep.
So it was good to go to a place to be loved. Right.
Right.
They appreciated my experience and all of that.
Yep.
But I also had met a gentleman who I had tried to get his company funded. We tried to help find him funds, and we're trying to figure out ways to work together. We finally figured that out. And one of the companies that he was consulting with was Parker Technology, which is the company that I'm running today.
Okay.
And so I started at Parker as a consultant.
Yep.
Talent, right? Sales talent.
Yep.
And so I sort of helped him sell. And then the chairman of the board called me and asked me if I'd like to work full time and thought it would be interesting to run Parker. And I said, well, I'd had about 8 months of experience with Parker, and you know, it was very straightforward. People were embracing it, and I'm like, let me just dig in. Let me write you a business plan. Let me see what I think it would take. Let me build some financials. I'll present it to the board. If the board likes it, let's go.
Yep.
And that was January of 2016.
Oh.
And so they liked it. We took off in January of 2016. Well, I'll explain. If you give me another 30 seconds, I'll explain what the business does.
Yeah, I was going
right?
to say, let them know what Parker
Sure.
Technologies do, what they do.
So here's how here's how I explain it to somebody who's walks up and they say, "So what do you do?" And I said, the first thing I tell them is I help people get out of parking garages.
Yeah, you do.
And they're like, "What? What does that mean?" I'm like, "Have you ever been stuck behind a gate?" And some people say yes, some people say no. But when they say yes, I say, "Well, what did you do?" They say, well, "I pushed the help button." I'm like, "And what happened?" Right? And then they'll tell me the story. So 20 years ago, the parking industry removed cashiers from the lanes and they replaced it with a machine.
Yep.
On that machine, they put a help button. So in January of 2016, we took calls from 45 different parking garages with automation and help buttons.
Yep.
Today, we take calls for 560, maybe 570 now.
Yeah.
Across the United States.
Wow.
So we've grown a lot in 6.5 years. We've
Yep.
had some great success. I've
Okay.
got a great team. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't been fired.
Right.
And if I hadn't made the connections to James Burns was the gentleman that actually set me up.
Or if you didn't believe in yourself and say that I'm just going to do something else and move on, you could have gave up. You could have put your head in the hole and felt sorry for yourself.
Yep. I sure could have done all those things. And there were probably days that I did, candidly,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But, I'd been through enough experiences with different leaders where you could clearly see that the tide shifted.
Yeah.
And I mean, people today, anybody that's listening to this podcast, if you work for a business, if you look at the leader and you look at how the business acts, I guarantee you it's really difficult for humans to get away from leadership, whether it's overt or covert.
Yeah.
It really is hard.
I agree.
Yeah.
I really agree.
So I'll tell you one quick story if I could.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is going to be a
This
3-hour podcast.
is your podcast.
No, I'm sorry. It's going to be a 3-hour podcast. Okay. So when I was a pharmaceutical rep, okay, I would walk into an office for the first time and I guarantee you, I could tell you exactly how the physician was going to treat me based on how the front desk person treated me.
Okay.
Okay. So I could walk into an office. And if that office was warm and friendly and, oh, yeah, sure, come on back. This is like guided me through the process. I knew that physician was warm and the same way I was going to get that reception. I can remember very distinctly. I won't say who it is. But this office I walked in, super cold, receptionist not very friendly. And lo and behold, that's exactly what I got from the physician. And so it was at that moment or during that time I began to appreciate that people really follow the leader. And so the point is, if you've got a leader that's not aligned with how you see the world, you may not be long for the world, or frankly, you could do better.
Right.
You can find people that are aligned with you.
Some people are born leaders, where it comes naturally.
Yeah.
And then some people try to be leaders.
Yeah.
And it usually works out to where the born leaders have a team that learns more than a person that's just trying to be a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I've had in my experience.
Well, I think that there are leaders that care about themselves and there are leaders that care about their organizations.
Yeah.
And the people that work for them are not confused. They know the difference.
They know.
And by the leader may be confused and the leader may delude themselves, but I guarantee you the people won't. They are not deluded. They know who that person cares about.
Yep.
And I worry every day that I show enough empathy and enthusiasm for everyone in my organization for them to know that I care as much about their success as I care about my success.
That's important, I think. I do have a question for you about the time when after you got fired. Mm-hmm. Was there any advice in that time that someone gave you that maybe helped you? Is there something that you always remember somebody told you?
Yeah. The advice that I gave or that was given to me is when you go in, make sure you love the deal or love the company or love whatever it is. Like you have to love it. Don't try and force it or fit it.
Okay.
And because what happens is, So take any situation, you go into it and you love it. That at least gives you a foundation to keep going.
Yep.
And then you can find ways to not love it. You can fall out of love. But if you don't love it, then you're rationalizing every other decision that you make.
Yep.
Right? Whether it's a relationship or it's a job.
Yep.
You have to love what you're, not necessarily love what you're doing, but you got to love the deal, love what the company's doing.
Yeah, there has to be love involved.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you don't have to necessarily love the work.
Right.
Right.
Well, you can't always love the work. They
Right.
call it work for a reason.
Yes.
And but you have to be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be inspired. That's unfair, right? Some people they have to work to make ends meet.
Yep.
Right. And so maybe if anything, we can inspire people to say that if you're misaligned in the organization for some reason, you can find alignment, because alignment is driven by people.
You can find it. That's the
You
thing.
can find
Sometimes we
alignment.
just don't try to find it.
Sometimes we don't try and find
Dang.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we're stuck, or it's easy. And
Easy.
sometimes, and by the way, that's okay too,
Yeah.
because we have seasons, right? Seasons when we have energy,
Yep.
and seasons when we have to lay low, right? And,
true.
and so sometimes the right thing to do is to just keep going.
Yep.
Is to plow through.
Yep.
And sometimes you just when you know that you should make a change, or when you're listening carefully, or if you got friends tapping you on the shoulder, then you should put an effort
Dang.
into it, right?
Yep.
So
What would if I pulled a team member of yours aside and I asked them to describe you, what do you think that they would say?
what do I think that they would say? Well, that he talks a lot. We just had that joke today. I do think that that particularly the people closest to me that report to me, and even down the line. So I could tell you a story about a young lady who just
got
got a
time for
promotion.
stories.
Okay, well, we just had a young lady who got an internal promotion, and so she's going to move from being a customer service representative into our implementation department. And she had an interview last week with the woman that runs client success, and she was going in, and she was so nervous. And I just said to her, I said, Lanisha, just go in and show her your real self.
Yep.
Okay, just take all the pressure off. Just show her your real self.
Yep.
Because I genuinely wanted her, and by the way, I did the same thing with the other candidate. There were two internal candidates, and I did the same thing in different ways. But I wanted their authentic selves to come through so that they could feel like they put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
Now, the truth is we're growing, and so there's going to be other opportunities. And I told them both the same thing, because I was sort of helping to sort of let them down. This isn't the last opportunity they're going to get.
Right.
But my view is, and what I would hope people would say about me is, I want to put them in an environment where they can be their best. I want to take the pressure off. I want to put pressure where there needs to be pressure. Okay, there's got to be performance pressure, but I want people to be at their best. I'm going to try and help shore up blind sides. I'm going to try and shore up obstacles that don't make sense or don't matter. I want them to perform at their best. Ultimately, I would hope that that's what they would say.
No, that's dope. And what's crazy is when we have breakfast, this is kind of how the conversation goes. Like, this is kind of how we talk, what we talk about, and now it's on my podcast, which is really why I started this podcast, because of the conversations that I have with people like you in those intimate moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do want to get into how you met Cornelius.
Yeah.
And why you found it necessary to introduce yourself to me as well.
Yeah.
Because where we are today in the world, and
Yep.
this, in particular, this country, what you're doing, in my opinion, is important.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to George Floyd.
Yep.
Right. And watching that
Yep.
and having to watch it for all of us. The what was it, 7 minutes, 9 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seven
brutal.
minutes.
And so I can watch that and I can be horrified by it.
Yep.
Okay. And then the groundswell that happened then caused other people that are close to me, other black men that are close to me, to raise their voice. I think probably for the first time, or maybe in a louder way. Okay. Or maybe in a different way. So I wasn't listening before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so.
But can I stop you for a second?
Sure. Yep.
What about the George Floyd situation made it different?
Well, I think that's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because for me, it was another
business
one.
As usual,
it was
wasn't
another
it?
one.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and for some reason, and it could be the pandemic, it could be everybody was home and it was forced upon us a little more, but it's not different.
Right. It's the same
for me, it wasn't.
thing, which is
but
really
a lot of people say George Floyd when they talk about the realization.
Yeah. And we should be able to rattle off all those names after and all those names before, right? To do it justice.
Yes.
So I can't honestly tell you what changed.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
maybe so maybe it was my aperture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But the key for me is I could go into conversations and we could rationalize all of George Floyd's history and all of that, right? And all of the things that normally took place.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And but what the key point for me was, first of all, Trevor Noah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember, he had, I don't remember how long it was, 7 or 9 minutes where he went through talking about breaking a social contract.
Okay.
So that was, for me, that was sort of the first piece that really like started to make me think about it differently.
Yep.
Okay. Because Trevor Noah was talking about the social contract we have to take care of each other.
Yep.
And when we don't take care of each other, then everyone feels like the social contract we tear it up.
Yeah.
Right. And so then we do whatever, we get angry and we do whatever we have to do to get somebody's attention.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if you remember that, but then I had 2 very successful black men. These men are much more successful than I am. And they started to talk about how throughout their history, they had also experienced the same types of harassment.
Yeah.
And so traffic stops, they got the talk from their parents and all of that. And I will tell you that it's sad to tell you the story now because it's a little embarrassing, right? That it took me this long for my eyes to be opened. But I began to realize that if it was happening to them, then it truly was happening to everybody.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't an isolated thing in the middle of a city, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
All of the normal rhetoric that was happening. And so when I saw that, I reached out to them, talked to both of them, and I looked at I looked at the things that I could do to help.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I could help do is I have a network. I have experience. I have knowledge.
Yep.
And what you do in your network is you share your knowledge, you share your experience, and you help people get things done, right?
Right.
And so when I looked at my Rolodex was pretty white.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so I felt like one of the first things that I could do was attempt to balance the color of my Rolodex.
Yep.
And so I started to reach out to those that I knew and ask them to make introductions.
Wow.
And so I started learning. I met different people. So Gary, oh God, Gary, you're going to kill me. Gary Chenault, thank you. I'm under pressure. The lights are hot. Gary Chenault was one of the very first black men that I was connected to through that program. So then fast forward to LinkedIn.
Yep.
I see Cornelius George post whatever he posted. I don't even remember what the purpose of the post was, but at the very end, the last sentence he put in there was, he said, "And I'm trying to kill my ego." Right. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's a guy that I need to know because I'm trying to kill my ego too. So we could relate to each other no matter what our backgrounds are, the color of our skin or what have you. Right.
Yep.
So I just reached out to Cornelius and I sent him a note via LinkedIn and I said, we should meet because I'm trying to kill my ego too.
Yeah.
And that was, I honestly, I can't tell you how long ago it was. Right. Because one of the things we talk about even at work or in my life is once a good person comes into your life, they sort of just melt into your life.
Right.
They just blend in.
Right.
they blend in, and all sense of how long they've been there just disappears because they've always been there.
Yes,
and
sir.
so I would say corn has always been there. I have no idea when the last time when it was that we met.
Right.
You're the same way, right? I
feel the
can't tell
same
you
way,
how
yeah.
long.
Yeah, I know exactly the day we met, but it just seems like you've been there longer than you have.
Yeah.
Honestly, because after that first meet, and then we had a breakfast after that, it was just a very, very organic friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it. But what you're doing is very important in creating access. And I think access is important when you're trying to talk about equality and diversity.
Yeah.
And I think that what hurts my community is the lack of access.
Right.
And until you were how old? George Floyd year.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah.
There was no access to your network. You had the couple of friends that you had, but how much help can you do after you allow people into your network?
Right.
With access.
Right. Yep. And then the switch for me again is just trying to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the truth is I could do more. But I'm also really good at pulling on threads.
Mm-hmm.
So from a sales perspective, I've always felt like I don't want people to buy things. I don't want to sell things to people. I want them to buy. And so a lot of that is drawing them to me.
Yeah.
And so, Corn gave me a thread. That's you, right?
Yeah.
You're going to lead me to someone else.
Yeah.
Gary Chenault gave me a thread, right? I want to pull on threads, and I want to wake up in 5 years and look back and go, wow, my network is more balanced, and I've
Right.
actually helped others get further faster. And it didn't matter, right? What their background was, or what their skin color was, or what their community looked like. They wanted help. They needed help. They're good people, hardworking, smart, honest. Then they fit in my network, and let's help them.
I think the most important thing that you said was you have to be intentional too, because without the intent, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
And you have to want to do it. It has to be something that's important to you. Without intent, it's not important.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's something that has changed about you since all this started?
Well, I think the main thing is the richness of the conversations and the richness of the relationships that I have.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my ability to be led to. So I'm thinking back. I took a class, and again, I'm going to blank on her name. Good heavens, Christina Williams is her name. She actually runs a 3 or 4 day class about systemic racism and about. So she again, I'm butchering it, and so Christina, Stretch will put it in the call notes.
I will
to do it right.
Yeah.
But I took this class, and there were 10 of us there, 9 of us there, and there were two white men that were leaders of organizations, and then there were various women and men that were black or of color, and that group was so welcoming to me. It was unbelievable,
Yeah.
right? But it gave me the ability to be vulnerable,
Yep.
because I'm going to say the wrong things.
Yep.
I'm going to offend people because I have privilege, and I'm not very, my blinders are pretty closed. But it gave me an opportunity to sort of learn more about the hot points, or the things that the different perspectives that would allow me to use to say things just in a different way that are more sensitive.
Yep. So you recognize the privilege that you have.
Oh, for sure.
In my conversations with people who are close to me, they do not believe in systemic racism, and they do not believe in having privilege. And it's hard. I don't think that people understand how hard it is to hear people that you care about who are not a marginalized person say that either they don't feel privileged or they don't believe in systemic racism. It's very tough.
Yeah. Again, I'll go back to the most simple examples of traffic stops, right? The best example that I have of being privileged is I can count on one hand the number of times I've been stopped in 55 years. So what is that? 40 years of driving.
Yeah.
Right. And I know people who tell lots of stories, like multiple stories.
Yep.
And so listen, you don't. You just have to open and look in your eyes and see that the access is different.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
so, yeah, we have to make progress.
So, do you think that it's important that you not only open your heart, your mind to other people, but do you share this with people who are like you, other white people?
I've had a few vigorous conversations.
I'm sure you have.
I have, and
I think that's the most volatile part of it.
Yeah, and
because you have to be alone sometimes.
Yeah, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It would be easy to shrink.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, again, one of the ways I'm trying to remember, it had nothing to do with this conversation, but it was about an issue that was politicized.
Yep.
And I was like, so we're not going to politicize it. Let's just stick to the facts.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the facts.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Talk about the number of times you've been stopped as a white male,
Yep.
and talk about the number of times that Stretch has been stopped, or
Yep.
Mike, or a day. Right. Yep. It's those numbers are different.
Yep.
And those numbers don't lie. Those are facts.
Yeah.
And so let's just talk about the facts. And then if we can agree that the facts are so different and now suddenly you don't see it, then
we need to stop having the conversation.
Well, or we're going to keep going
Yeah.
because I have to present more evidence to you, which is fine. The good news is that most of these individuals that I've had these conversations with are relatively open-minded.
Okay.
Relatively.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And I can tell I have hope that I'm chipping away.
Okay.
Right. I have hope that I'm chipping away.
I think you explained it, but what would you say is your biggest goal in expanding your network? If you could say, this is my moment that made me very proud of what I did, what would it look like?
Well, it would look like people having success that I played a key part in, that they may not have had that success if I didn't. Now, I don't want to make that sound like I'm the great white hope.
Yeah.
I want to make it sound like that I played a key piece and I bridged a gap, or
you allowed access.
I allowed access.
Yeah.
And I genuinely want to help those folks.
Yeah.
And it's part of who I am, right?
Yeah.
It's part of, I tell people all the time, you have to have a servant's heart to work at Parker Technology because we help each other and we cover each other's gaps. But success is widespread success
Yep.
of the people that I've at least touched in some way.
Yeah.
I don't have to be pivotal, but if I played a part,
you played a part in it.
yeah,
That would be very rewarding for you.
for sure.
Dope.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been saying, and I've been on this crusade because I'm allowed in a lot of circles that a lot of people aren't, and I find myself being the only black person, or sometimes the only person of color, period. And I just find that it is important that when we are making something happen, that we include others and we include other perspectives. And I have a conversation with John all the time about, we'll go to something and I'll say, yeah, it was good, but I was the only black dude.
Yeah.
And they weren't intentional on making more people aware of what was going on. And I think that what you're doing will have that conversation in more circles and have more events where it is more diverse, allow more access. And a lot of people are talking about how they want to show diversity, but they're not putting in any work to make it more diverse.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. There's more work to be done. So I am not done by a long shot. And the part about inclusion, so this is, to me, is that really? Yeah. Okay, the itsy bitsy spider. Okay, good. Well, thank you. You saved my life.
I saved you. Did you see it?
Yeah, I got
It was about to land on you, man. I got it.
Good.
I got the spider.
He probably won't eat that much. He's probably just eating the dandruff out of my hair or something. So the part about access and widening your aperture,
Yep.
you have to be intentional.
Yep.
And so our ability to, I'm saying that out loud for me, because heck, I could give you 3 examples of where inside my organization where we're having a conversation and the leader sitting next to me says, well, you didn't tell me about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I didn't include you.
Yeah.
Right. And so it happens all the time. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be intentional. I'm trying to pull on threads. I see interesting people and I try and reach out and meet them because it's about building my network and creating connections.
Right.
That's at least the mission that I'm on. And then you're gonna expose me, and it will change you'll change my mission, right? And so I'm hoping that I can change the mission based on people that I know and trust, rather than sort of throwing myself into the cauldron.
Yep.
Because that's hard too. I'll tell you, I'm scared of that, right?
Well, okay. So I'm gonna explain why it was important for you to be on here, because everybody just heard your mission,
right?
And for me, this is going to sound like the Great White Hope theory, but it's not the same when I have conversations like this with like-minded people. It's not the same when I sit across from a black person and talk about systemic racism or injustice. But when someone like yourself comes to me and says that you understand, I hear you, or I want to listen. That is very important, and it takes a white person to make that change in my mind too. To say that, you know, all white people aren't bad. All white people aren't about themselves. All white people don't believe this or that. We can all do this together,
right?
And it's very important that you are heard and you say that, and people listen to that, because a white person is going to listen to this. And then they're going to get it. It's gonna one person. Yeah. One person.
Yeah. Let's set our bar. It only takes one.
It only takes one,
because we've seen this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's true.
I think it is.
And yeah.
Cheers. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you my question that I ask everyone.
And which one? Because I've listened to a lot of podcasts.
I know.
And the question changes.
No, but I'm gonna ask you, because you are a successful young man.
Sure.
How would you define success?
Yeah. Success for me, I am money motivated, no question. Okay. Yep. So I'm not trying to pull wool over anybody's eyes, but what I will say is, it struck me. There's a guy named Scott Galloway. He writes a column, and he was talking about his dad. Yep. And he was talking about his dad, how his father was a salesperson, and he dressed to the nines, and he would leave the house.
Yep.
And he and his mom lived a poor life. Yep. Okay, so everything around the house was all about poor, and when his dad left, he was all about rich. Yep. And he asked his mom, "Why is Dad rich and we're poor?"
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so he said, why doesn't he share?
Wow.
Okay. And so to me, what I want people to know is I want to share. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I want to be a part of it, but I want to share. I want to make sure. So in another venue, I talked about people standing on my shoulders. Maybe it's as much as me pulling, or taking people along. Yep. But I don't have the magic recipe. But if I've had success, I want to be able to share, so that others can have that same feeling and that same success. Right? It's intoxicating to see people have success around me where I know I've had a part of it. Yeah. Because then you get to share it with people.
Right. It's like as simple as being at a dinner table and everybody's full. Yeah. And everybody ordered what they wanted and ate what they wanted, and aside from you just buying everything you want, and eating and not knowing everybody's story, and they can't afford to buy it or whatever. But if you're at a table where everybody's eating everything they want and they're full, there's nothing else to ask.
Right.
They're all eating.
They're all eating
what they want, they want.
And then get them a doggy bag.
Yeah.
Right?
Give them extra.
Let's take it home with us because it'll cascade.
It will.
See, this is the thing, right? The cascade. So I'll go back to this young lady that got the promotion. Yep. So a year ago, 2 years ago, she talked about how important creating wealth for her family was. Yep. That really struck me. Yep. Okay. I wanted to be a part of that story. I wanted to be a part of her having the ability to build her version of wealth for her family.
Yep.
That really struck me. And so I was thrilled. She's been with us for a long time.
Yeah.
And she's going to get a promotion.
Nice.
And she'll probably get a raise with that. And
Good.
so, she's hopefully she'll stay with us for a long time.
Good.
And she'll continue to have a stable life where she can feed her boys.
Yep.
And build wealth.
Good.
So
good. I don't have much else. I can talk to you for hours. We do this all the time.
Well,
but
let's do it again and again and again.
We
Not
will.
necessarily in the podcast.
We will. And I think that what I wanted to accomplish, you did it nail on the head.
Okay.
And I do have one last question. This is it. The last one. You are a Follow D Money podcast listener.
I am.
I want to know what your favorite episode is so far.
Yeah. Well, it's the cop out would be with your mom. Okay.
That would be a cop out?
Well,
I mean, we've talked about that one. I know that you like that one.
Only because I can hear it in your voice. So remember when I talked about how it's good to see the people?
Yep.
Because when I'm listening on the treadmill, I'm not watching.
Right.
And to hear your voice and to
Yep.
hear you engage. So obviously your mom is very special to you.
Yep.
I won't remember the couple of women that you interviewed with specific charities.
Yeah.
The one, the safe home for
Coburn Place.
Okay.
Yep.
For the women.
Yep.
That was really good.
That's Julie. Yep.
Yep. But all of the individuals that you've had have a great story to tell.
Right.
And so mom is special. I like hearing about the charities because I didn't know about these places.
Yep.
And so it's good to know
Independence Academy in Coburn. Yep.
Yeah. And then let me think. Wow, you put me on the spot. I was not expecting that one in particular. I won't. Was it VMAC? Who was the guy that you had on the show?
Yeah.
That wouldn't come on originally because you were. He was. Oh man.
He wouldn't come on originally.
Was he a rapper?
No. Like
No.
I asked somebody to come and I kept asking him.
Maybe.
Tragic? No, it wasn't tragic.
Oh.
Did you hear tragic?
No, I didn't get to that one.
I'm trying to think of who. I can't remember.
I'm trying to think. You put me on the spot. Heck, I can't even remember friends' names. How am I going to remember podcast names? Give me another.
Jason Jenkins? Oh, Hagemeyer, the hairdresser.
Yo, that
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Right?
He was the one that I asked to come on.
And then you convinced him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a good one too.
Yeah, it was a good one. So again, I have a soft spot for people who get really real.
Yeah.
Okay. And power through it. The key is they powered through it.
He did too, because he was very nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he just powered through life.
He did.
Right.
He did. He persevered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I could share our friendship on my platform. I'm glad you got to meet my crew.
Yeah. Super cool crew for sure.
I want everybody to please follow D Money Pod on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I don't even know if we have Snapchat. But yeah, go to followdmoney.com. We got t-shirts, merch. Watch the episodes. Please just follow us. Tell us what you think about this episode. And we have a lot of things in store for you for the rest of this season. We will talk to you later. Brian, say bye.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming, brother.
Appreciate it.